Dan, do you think, I mean, obviously your premise is that we, the consumer, have an enormous amount of control and an enormous amount of power, but do very few of us choose to use it?
I think people are, it depends on the topic. The more important it is to us, the more I think people do take some control themselves over knowing what they're talking about. The more the consequences there are of being wrong, the more likely we are to dig a little deeper into things. I hope, I think.
But do more of us choose to be passive?
I think most people, including me, are more passive than active on this. I think part of this is I learn what sources I need and want to trust. I don't automatically believe them, but I have much more trust in them, and I have to rely on them. I can't re-report everything. As I said, we all need to find people, organizations, et cetera, that we find trustworthy, and we have no alternative than trust in every way.
And ultimately, if more of us do become active and more of us question things and do the things that you talked about there, what is the tangible result? What is the tangible effect?
The effect, I hope, is that if we improve demand, we improve supply. And that's, it's a hypothesis, but I'm betting on it because I don't think we have a choice.
Another question, I suppose, that was raised there when you were talking about the principles of thoroughness, fairness, etc., but you mentioned transparency as well, and accountability comes in there as well. Do you think that the advent of social media has brought traditional journalists and old-style journalists, as it were, closer to the public? Has it enforced an accountability and a transparency that perhaps wasn't there before, in the same way that, you know, the medical profession sometimes believe they're superior to the public? Do many journalists think that too?
It depends on, of course, the individual. I think more so than not, that these new forms of media are helping journalists understand that they're in the conversation world as opposed to the lecture world. And, you know, what's the first rule of a conversation? It's listen. And if journalists are starting to listen, I think that's wonderful. And I see signs that it's happening more and more. I know plenty of journalists who want nothing whatever to do with their audience. And I expect that over time we'll see fewer of them and more of the ones who do want to listen. And
are they confined to old media?
I don't like the word confined. I think there are some people doing journalism who I'm perfectly happy that they go burrow themselves away and spend, you know, years working on something, typically a book, that is like stunning. So if one of the great American journalists, a guy named Robert Caro, I don't expect him to do a blog. I would kind of be disappointed if he did. I'd think, why are you wasting your time on this when you could be doing great books? So we still need some of these people who are entirely focused on that. But I think for most of us, it's a mix.
Okay, any questions from the floor? Up here. Hi, thanks, Stephen, in the front row here.
Hi, I'm Fergal Gallagher from the Digital Humanities and Journalism Group in NUI Galway. You talked about trust and about people being more sceptical. I know it's kind of related to a question earlier, but you know, how should people view their credibility? What should they look for that makes someone credible? Whether, you know, it's easy with the BBC, like you said, or where in those blurred lines, what would you like audiences to look for?
So on things that I know something about, I learn fairly quickly what sources I can trust more than not. That's the easy case, I think. This is an interesting thing we're going to figure out, and one of the ways I learn about things that I can trust on topics where I don't know as much is to find people who I trust in other ways about things they know, who are then telling me you can trust this person because I also know things about this. You're always making a bet at some level that reputation can go in a number of ways. But it's one of the exciting areas that is developing where, and things going on in Silicon Valley, where people are starting to find ways to combine human and machine intelligence, where we can find ways to bring reputation, which is a really complicated word, into this mix. I think it's essential. I think it's going to be perhaps what creates this secret sauce that will help us figure out what we as individuals and as communities, just as important, can trust more than not. So it's quite early in this, but right now we're kind of guessing at some level, but evidence always helps too. If people are consistently wrong, well, I trust them to be entertaining at most.
Okay, over here.
Good morning. My name is Brendan O'Brien, and I'm from the advertising side of the business, so I'm quite well used to having my words mistrusted, as it were. But what strikes me about this morning is that there seems to be a growing connectivity almost between that kind of lack of credibility that exists in the advertising community and in advertising relative to its acceptance by the public, and news. News is becoming less trusted, it seems to me, or certainly it seems the opinion of the panelists seems to suggest that you yourselves feel you are less trusted. My question is not to do with that. It really is to do with the fact that if you guys have spent most of your lives causing us to question the trustworthiness of other organizations, be it church, be it state, why should you be particularly concerned about a diminishment of trust in your own business, in your own philosophies? You can be effective, it seems to me, without the need for trust. Why this innocent desire?
I can't agree with that. I think trust is at the heart of journalism and providing information. And without it, it's just stuff. It's just words and music. It's one of the reasons I think transparency is so important for journalists, because the great there's been a pretense in journalism that mistakes are incredibly rare and that that we're really always almost always right. And anybody who's been covered by journalists knows that it's just not true. There's always something off if you've been covered, always. It may not be an outright error of fact, but there's always something strange in articles when you're the subject. I believe strongly, again, and this is hypothesis, I believe that if we are completely forthcoming about the mistakes we make and about the reasons why we're doing things and about how we do things, or as forthcoming as possible, something really interesting may happen. We may be believed a little bit less because we'll be telling people about what we don't get right. Believed a little less, but I think trusted a lot more. And I think that's a wonderful trade to make. And helping people, again, I beg journalists to make media literacy part of their mission, because I think it will, helping people understand how hard good journalism is to do is going to build trust over the long term. So I don't want to pick on advertising, but it's a different kind of information. I don't think journalists have anything to offer beyond trusted information. That's how it feels.
Okay. Stuart.
Dan, could I just take you back to the slide you had, which appeared to be a blog format with the words blah, 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 and you had above it, this is not journalism. And it goes to something you said in your answer to Audrey, that I think you said that, you'd been disappointed if somebody who wrote a book wrote a blog. And I'm not sure I get this difference in your mind about what is journalism. I mean, they're just different formats, aren't they? I mean, some of them have long lead times to publications, some don't. Some have more words, some have less. But actually, surely you're judging the words, you're not judging the format.
Absolutely, and if that's unclear, I apologize. But what I said about, there are a few people who do certain kinds of literature who I personally, my preference would be that they spend no time at all doing anything but that, because they're so brilliant and powerful at that one thing. That's just me being selfish. If they want to do a blog, of course, that's fine. And the format is I'm indifferent as to the format. Most blogs are not journalism, some blogs are. When it comes to journalism, that's the ones I pay attention to.
But why can't somebody whose speciality is long-form journalism or other long-form sort of content creation not offer just short-form occasional insights?
They absolutely can. And again, I'm not saying whoever wants to create media in any form has my backing. All I'm saying is, very selfishly, there are some authors who in my opinion, are so good at that particular thing that I would hate for them to divert even a second of time away from that. That's just me wishing they do more of what I like. I'm not going to, if Robert Caro wants to start a blog, or any of the great reporters of our time, that's fine. But, I'd rather that they do their books, because that's what I really enjoy from them. Again, I'm not at all saying that anyone should not do something. Everyone should try whatever they want to try. It's information, it's communication.
I think the man behind you, Stephen Stewart, thanks.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick one. You made the point about asking journalists to make media literacy part of their mission. Surely society at large, surely we should be putting media literacy into, national schools, secondary school, or whatever it is in the equivalent countries. Because at the end of the day, we're all media literate, largely because we're professionals in some shape or form in the area, and even sometimes we struggle to see the fine lines between different things. But if you take it, the public at large is bombarded by media where the thin lines between entertainment, news, documentary, commentary are blurred. Surely media literacy for society at large is something that we should focus on, because the market will take its pathway as it does and decide which way it wants to back it. And we've talked earlier on about how there are lots of different things happening at the moment, and there's sort of a lot of open bets, if you want to put it that way. But surely if the public at large had a greater degree of media literacy, then the possibility of their trust being abused is at least in some way obviated.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are a lot of ways to approach it. I hope there are consequences for people who provide bad information. And that I hope there's an actual marketplace of good ideas and good information that wins over salacious or false information, which in the economic sense tends to win. It has for a long time. Tabloid journalism of various kinds has always been more successful financially than the kind of journalism that I prefer. I think that the more the public discovers consequences to being misinformed, negative consequences, the better chance we have of the public demanding better information. I don't think this is going to happen quickly. I think it's going to be a long, long time before anybody sees a lot of progress. But I do think there's been an increasing recognition that this notion of news literacy, media literacy, whatever we want to call it, means something and is important. And again, I think it would be to the great advantage of quality news media to be the chief promoters of this, as opposed to leaving it on the side, which is what they've done.
Okay, we've just time for one last question. The lady over here, Stephen.
Thank you very much. My name is June Kelly. I'm not a journalist, but I'm just an independent collector of alternative news and information, that sort of thing. Just thinking for a moment, the gentleman over there was mentioning about the role of public relations companies and news. I think most people would remember during the course of the build-up of the Iraq War, this is going back to the first 1991 era, where the British company Hill & Knowlton, the public relations firm there, was paid huge monies by the Kuwaiti government to put a particular line over to, I guess, rally public support for Western intervention in Iraq. During the time of the Balkans War, I think it was the American companies Ruder and Finn and Waterman's, two public relations firms who were paid enormous monies by the Croatian and Bosnian and Albanian separatists to create a certain image and public opinion around the war in the Balkans. And so I was just wondering now if these companies, PR companies, might these days still be playing a part in the creation of the news as regards, say, the situation in the Middle East. And also, too, I'd like to just add, if I may, that more and more lately, and particularly to do with the situation in Libya and now Syria, there'll be images, wobbly as they are, on the TV screen. The reporter will be saying X, Y, and Z, the goodies and the baddies. But at the end of the report, there'll be a comment, oh, these images can't be verified. I think if I was a journalist or anybody to do with, say, RTE, I'd feel really bad about having to say that at the end of a report, because it's all presented so with such authority.
Okay.
But thanks very much. Sorry to go on so long. Thank you very much for your contribution.
PR companies and the propaganda, I suppose.
One of the, there's an enormous amount of news that's generated originally by people with a stake in the outcome. That's always been the case. I don't see that ever changing. Again, it's we in the audience have to be careful about what we trust. I'd like to see more journalism people be harder on their peers and compatriots in journalism when they do this sort of thing, when they buy things that are clearly being sold in a surreptitious way. Media criticism used to be just the province of a couple of obscure magazines. One of the great things about blogging has been a powerful rise in media criticism that is highly useful. You'll hear later from Paul, who is one of the fine media critics in the UK. And we need more. And I think one of the journalism people have tended to go easy on each other. I think it should be a free-for-all. When people see things that are improper, we should just say so. And, you know, I think journalists could improve their standing in public trust pretty quickly by banning the use of anonymous sources in all but like the rarest, most rare situations, instead of having them appear in almost every story they do. Easy to say, hard to do, but I think it would benefit the whole business, because they always have some agenda.
Okay. Thank you all very much indeed for your questions. And on your behalf, let us thank again Dan Gillmor.
Thank you.